The sky broke without a sound. One moment, the twin suns of Ethelgard warmed the fields. The next, shadows fell. They were not clouds. They were vast black hulls. Silent ships descended with impossible grace. They blotted out the light over the colony of Haven. Panic was a wildfire. People pointed, they screamed. They ran through the clean, white streets. The colony's automated defenders remained silent. The ships were not hostile, not yet. They simply hung there. They were like judges in the sky. Then came the warning. It was not a siren or a shout. It was a pressure in the air. A low pulse thrummed deep in the chest of every colonist. It was a single repeating note of immense power. It was a quiet warning that refused to be ignored. Something new had arrived. And humanity was no longer alone. A strange current moved through the city grid. It was not a surge or an outage. It was something more subtle, something with intent. The lights in the high towers began to flicker. They did not flicker randomly. They pulsed in complex, shifting patterns. It was a language written in light. The colonists felt it in their homes. The network terminals hummed with a new resonance. Data streams showed ghost signals weaving through secure channels. The city's own systems were being touched. They were being explored by an invisible guest. Technicians stared at their screens, completely baffled. They said the system was healthier than ever. Diagnostics were running at 100%. This was no ordinary attack. It was an infiltration of impossible skill. It felt less like a weapon and more like a presence. People walking under the street lights felt a soft tingle, a gentle electric pulse on their skin. It was the whisper of the nanovirus. It was learning them. It was learning their world. The city had a new ghost in its machine. And it was starting to speak. The air began to sing. A melody wrapped the planet. It did not come from the silent ships above. It seemed to well up from the very atmosphere. The song was a siren's call. It was beautiful and filled with an ancient sorrow. It bypassed the ears and bloomed directly in the mind. People stopped in the streets. They turned their faces to the sky. The haunting music pulled at something deep within them. It promised wonders beyond the veil of stars. It offered an end to struggle, an end to fear. Those who listened felt an overwhelming urge. They wanted to walk toward the shimmering horizon. The song was a temptation, a perfect resonant lure. Small groups of colonists began to wander. They left the safety of the city walls. They walked toward the strange glow at the edge of the world. They were drawn by a promise they could not understand. The colony's leaders watched in horror. Their people were walking willingly into the unknown. The alien siren was not just a sound. It was a weapon aimed at the human heart. The Elder Council met in the great stone chamber. Their faces were carved with worry. The air was thick with the scent of old stone and ozone. High Elder Ilara stood before the central holotable. Her eyes were fixed on the display of the silent ships. She had led this colony for 50 years. It does not attack, she said, her voice calm. It calls to them. It offers them peace. The younger council member, Kalen, slammed his fist on the table. It is a trap, Ilara, a lure to draw us out. We must raise the shields. We must fight. Another elder shook his head. Fight what? Silent ships and a song? Our weapons would be useless. They would be swatting at ghosts. They debated for hours. Their voices echoed in the chamber. They weighed the risk of action against the cost of doing nothing. Humanity's hope was a fragile thing. It was a choice between a swift, defiant end or a slow, uncertain surrender. Ilara looked at the faces around her. She saw fear and anger and a flicker of hope. She knew their decision would shape the future forever. "There is another way," she whispered. "A secret we have kept for a century." Deep beneath the colony, something slept. It was a secret kept from generations of colonists. Miles of rock and earth shielded a vast, hidden chamber. In the center of that chamber was the engine. It was not a machine of human design. It was ancient. It was alien. Its gears and conduits were made of a crystalline metal. It hummed with a low, resonant power. The rhythm of its hum matched the turning of distant stars. It was a piece of forgotten star science, a relic left by a long-dead civilization. The first colonists had found it here. They had built their city on top of it. They knew it was their last resort, their final, desperate gambit. Activating it was a terrible risk. The engine's power was immense. It was untamed. It could save them, or it could shatter their entire world in a single pulse. Now, the council's debate was over. The order was given. Technicians in sterile suits moved through the chamber. They woke the engine from its long slumber. Its gears began to turn. Its hum grew into a powerful, planet-shaking thrum. It was the only thing that could answer the siren's call. Not everyone could be saved by the engine. The colony was too large. The energy required was too great. The council made the hardest choice. They would send away the children. They would send away the families with a future. A fleet of cargo ships was prepared in secret. Their engines glowed like fireflies in the underground docks. The evacuation was silent and swift. There were no grand farewells, only the quiet tears of parents holding their children close. They promised to follow. It was a promise no one knew if they could keep. The ships rose from hidden launch bays. They sailed into the void, a small, brave fleet. They carried the most precious cargo, the future of their people. From the surface, they looked like lanterns. They were tiny sparks of light fleeing into the black. Below them, the colonists who remained prepared for the storm. They had chosen to stand and face the unknown. For them, there would be no rescue, only the gamble of the engine. The black hulls in the sky began to move. They did not fire weapons. They began to shed their outer layers. Huge panels of dark metal rained down. The debris became a storm of projectiles. They streaked through the upper atmosphere. They were aimed at the heart of the colony. "Activate the nets," Kalen's voice commanded in the control center. Giant projectors on the city's edge hummed to life. They cast a web of golden energy into the sky. The deflector nets shimmered into existence. They formed a dome of light over the entire colony. The first pieces of debris struck the shield. Sparks scattered across the sky. Each impact was a silent explosion of light. The dome groaned under the immense pressure. Arcs of raw energy painted the dark clouds. It was a beautiful and terrifying sight. Inside the control center, consoles flashed red. The nets were holding. But they were bleeding power at an alarming rate. It was a battle of attrition. The aliens had endless debris. The colony had a finite supply of energy. The sky was on fire. And the colonists could only watch. They hoped their shield would last the night. Marcus moved through the engine chamber with quiet purpose. He was one of the lead technicians. His face was known and trusted by everyone. He smiled at the guards. He checked the readouts with a practiced eye. No one saw the small device he palmed in his hand. No one questioned his movements. He reached a critical power conduit. It pulsed with the raw energy of the waking engine. He looked around. The other technicians were occupied. They were fighting to keep the system stable. With a quick, precise movement, he attached his device. It was a synaptic dampener. It would not cause an explosion. It would do something far worse. It would choke the energy flow at the critical moment. The engine would falter. It would fail. His motive was a secret he kept locked away. He believed the siren's call. He believed it offered not destruction, but ascension. He thought humanity needed to surrender, to evolve, and he was willing to betray everyone he knew to make it happen. He was sure he was their true savior. The ground shuddered. A deep, groaning sound echoed from below. The synaptic dampener was working. The engine's hum became unstable. It was a discordant, angry noise. Outside, a direct result of the power fluctuation was seen. A massive crack appeared in the earth at the edge of the colony. The fissure opened with terrifying speed. It was a gaping wound in the planet's crust. It widened, swallowing buildings and streets. A churning abyss of magma and rock was revealed below. The deflector nets flickered and died. The sky was now unprotected. Alarms blared across the colony. "Evacuate to the deep shelters," a calm, automated voice announced. The voice was a stark contrast to the chaos. Citizens fled into the winding tunnels beneath the city. They ran from the encroaching darkness. The ground buckled around them. They could feel the abyss growing wider. It threatened to swallow them all. Their world was quite literally falling apart. The promise of the engine was turning into a nightmare. They were trapped between a silent enemy in the sky and a hungry darkness below. The main control room was a place of ordered chaos. The elders stood on a raised platform. They looked down at the technicians working at their consoles. A massive holographic display dominated the wall. On it, a timer counted down. 5 minutes until the engine reached minimum firing capacity. "The fissure is expanding," an engineer shouted. "We are losing containment on sectors 3 and 4. Kalen gripped the railing. His face was a mask of grim determination. "Focus all auxiliary power on the engine's core stabilizers. Forget the fissure. If the engine fails, nothing else matters." Every second felt like an hour. The room thrummed with the engine's tortured song. The countdown continued its relentless pace. 4 minutes. The lights flickered. 3 minutes. A console exploded in a shower of sparks. Each tick of the clock echoed across the colony. It was the sound of their hope dwindling. The final countdown had begun, and the odds were not in their favor. Then the siren song changed. The beautiful, haunting melody faded. It was replaced by something new. A voice. It was not male or female. It was calm, resonant, and impossibly vast. It spoke not through speakers, but through the city's network. Through the nanovirus, it spoke directly into their minds. "Your struggle is unnecessary," the voice said. The words were clear, without any hint of malice. "We are not here to conquer. We are a catalyst, a force for change across the star-born sea." The colonists in the tunnels stopped. The technicians in the control room froze. Everyone listened. "Your world is at a precipice," the voice continued. "This engine you have woken, it is a tool of creation, or a weapon of absolute ruin. The choice was always yours." A question hung in the void. A promise of salvation was offered, but it required a leap of faith. It asked humanity to stop fighting, to stop resisting. It asked them to listen. But trust was a currency they no longer had. The engine screamed. The dampener was pushing it toward a critical failure. The stabilizers were failing. "It needs a guide," a frantic technician yelled. "The energy is chaotic. It needs a consciousness to focus it. A human mind to complete the circuit." Everyone knew what that meant. To interface directly with the engine's core was not survivable. The human mind would be burned away by the raw power. It was a death sentence. A final, complete sacrifice. In the silence that followed, High Elder Alara stepped forward. She looked at Kalen, her old friend. A sad smile touched her lips. A leader's duty is to her people, from the first day to the last. Before anyone could stop her, she walked to the interface chair. It sat before the engine's core controls. She placed the neural link headset over her silver hair. Her courage was a beacon in the encroaching darkness. She was offering her mind, her memories, her very soul. She would become the will of the machine. She would risk everything for her people. May they remember the cost, she whispered. Then she closed her eyes and activated the link. The engine's scream changed. It became a pure, clean tone. Alara's consciousness flooded the machine. She guided the torrent of chaotic energy. She gave it purpose. A brilliant, white light erupted from the chamber deep below. It surged to the surface. It was not an explosion. It was a wave. A clean wave of energy that swept across the planet. The great fissure sealed itself. The broken ground knit itself back together. The sky, once filled with debris and smoke, began to brighten. The energy wave touched the black hulls of the alien ships. They did not explode. They dissolved. They broke apart into countless motes of light. They became a shower of shimmering particles. The stars themselves seemed to applaud. The colony of Haven was saved. The engine, guided by a human heart, had not destroyed. It had healed. A new dawn broke over a world that had been pulled back from the very edge of the abyss. The air was clean. The silence was absolute. In the silence, the colonists emerged from the shelters. They looked at their unbroken city. They gazed at the clean, bright sky. The alien siren, the resonant voice, was gone. It had vanished as mysteriously as it had arrived. It left only the quiet hum of a healed world and an echo of hope. The cost of their survival was heavy. High Elder Alara was gone. Her body was still in the chair, but her consciousness was now part of the engine's song, a permanent, silent guardian beneath their feet. They mourned her sacrifice. They celebrated their survival. Their victory was bittersweet. In the quiet that followed, they began to rebuild, not just their city, but their understanding of the universe. They were not just survivors. They were something more. They were the people who had answered a question from the void, and their answer had been courage. Years passed. The children who had fled on the rescue ships returned. They returned to a thriving, peaceful world. They learned the stories of the arrival storm, of the siren's call, of the great sacrifice. The engine was no longer a secret weapon. It was a revered monument. Its gentle hum was a reminder of Alara's spirit. The new generations would look up at the stars. They would not see an empty, hostile void. They saw a place of wonder, a place of catalysts and questions. Their history was etched into the sky, a story of a small colony that faced the end, a tale of the heroism that allowed them to survive. Their legacy was not one of fear. It was one of resilience. The voice from the void had called them, and humanity, in its own defiant way, had answered. Their future among the stars had just begun.